morning. Welcome to our session on Can Business and Planet Win in Times of Crisis? It's my great pleasure to be hosting this discussion with two distinguished leaders from science and business, Johan Rockström and Nicola Hagleitner. My name is Albert Cheung. I'm Deputy CEO of BloombergNEF, where I oversee our analysis of the clean energy transition. And from where I sit today, I think this question is absolutely essential to explore, and how to align business and economic growth and rising living standards with the need to address the climate crisis and stay within the planetary boundaries, Johan, that you've described. And I know our time is going to go very quickly, so I want to start by jumping straight in, Johan, with some follow-up questions for you. Your presentation was quite sobering, and it's sobering particularly because the international community has been looking to address these issues since the 1990s. So my question is quite simple. Why have we not grasped this yet? Why are we not on top of this problem yet?
Yeah, thanks, Albert. Yeah, so of course that is a simple question, but with multifaceted answers. And we know fundamentally that one reason is that the climate crisis in particular is a slow crisis. It is something that locks us into major impacts further in the future, and we're not good in our economy to deal with unmanageable outcomes which may have infinite cost, but they may occur within 30, 40, 50 years. So that's one factor. It's not like something that hits you in the face like a pandemic or similar. Secondly, of course, we have 150 years of running the global economy on fossil fuels, so we have locked ourselves in. It's not only vested interest, it's infrastructure, it's the very logic of our GDP-based economy. So I mean, that's the second part. And the third part, I think also to be self-critical, I actually think that we in the scientific community have not been able to really communicate that 1.5 degrees Celsius is a big number, we need to avoid it, and to really do a risk assessment a bit more clearly. And business understands risk, but we scientists understand uncertainty. And this has not been a very carrying message point. So I think that is also one factor. But then finally also to say that, I mean, we live in a multifaceted world, and we have many things to be concerned about, and just look at the world today. And this is a dilemma that climate and the planet has been placed in the environmental compartment, politically and in societies. And environment is a side ministry in most countries, and is a topic that is kind of put along an equal horizontal line as education and health and defense and finance. And that, of course, means that, oh my God, I have a problem here, so then let's put a pause button on the environmental one. We wait a bit, as if you can negotiate with the planet, but you can't. I would have wished, of course, that we would have placed the planet surrounding all the political areas. You should have had the environmental ministers 30 years ago sitting just next to the prime ministers in every country. Then it would have been a bit more of a chapeau framing that would help us guide the whole transition. But in fact, we placed it on a kind of a CSR or ESG, or in all respects we've done good, we've made major progress, but we placed it too much on a sideline.
So I would just I think those are very good points. I would differ slightly on your characterization that scientists are not good communicators. I think present company included, there are some good exceptions to that.
I think we should potentially do even better. But anyway, thanks, Albert.
Nicola, I want to bring you in here. I mean, what an insightful presentation from Johan. You hold a senior leadership position within DHL, which is, of course, one of the world's leading logistics providers. So how do you think about these challenges and the opportunities around sustainability and low-carbon transition within DHL, and how do you align it with the business?
Well, you're right. It was a very sobering presentation. Even though we all know, to see it again and to hear it from you, it is very sobering. And even more sobering for me than the facts here is that there are still people who contest those facts. Yeah. That for me is really the sobering issue. Yes, we are where we are now, but that now we're still saying, this is not scientific, and it's not as bad as it is. That is for me extremely sobering, and that, linking back to the business, makes me very proud to actually work for a company that is been on the sustainability agenda, not just the last 2-3 years where everybody's talking about, but we started really 2007, 2008 to really create a sustainability strategy. And we are one of the largest logistics providers, and obviously we also have a significant carbon footprint. But we're also the backbone of global trade. So we had to think, how can we keep this backbone going, but making it much greener? And we started very early to really think, what can we do as a company? And if I give you an example, in Germany, we have 60,000 vehicles that deliver parcels and mail in Germany. So we went to all the OEMs and said, look, the future is in electric delivery. Please help us build this delivery vehicle. And not a single one wanted to work with us and wanted to build this delivery vehicle then. So we actually, as a company, decided, we partnered with a university and we built our own vehicles. And this is how we started really the journey. All the green, the yellow street scooters you might see here in Germany, we actually started building them on our own. And that's just one part where we really said, okay, if nobody else helps us or collaborates, we do it. But that's not sustainable. So I'm glad that the agenda of many others has also changed. And we also don't have a dedicated sustainability strategy anymore. As of last year, we added to the 3 bottom lines that we had anyway: investment of choice, provider of choice, employer of choice. We now have green logistics of choice, because we don't need a dedicated strategy. We need it to be the strategy. And now we have, of course, to balance all these 4 bottom lines. We all know it's not cheap. It doesn't come cheap, but it comes at a significant price if we don't continue on this sustainability agenda.
That's amazing to hear, and I couldn't agree more that this transition has to be part of the core business strategy of these key players. So maybe to go more into detail then, from BNEF's point of view, we're really excited about the opportunity for electrification in road transport, both for passenger but also for commercial vehicles, of which DHL is a major operator, and also other areas like sustainable aviation fuels for aircraft as well. I believe DHL has some ambitious targets in these areas. Could you talk a bit about where you are in those transitions?
Yeah, so our target is 2050 net zero. That's a clear end goal, but we of course also have intermediate milestones. So 2030 is the next milestone, where we want to reduce scope 1 and 2 by 42% and scope 3 by 25%. And one has to know, 75% of our emissions come from air and ocean. So they come from our international divisions. So you mentioned SAF. We have been buying a lot of SAF. Actually, 2023 and 4, we bought 14% of the actual supply in the world, DHL bought. And that means we have now 3.2% of our fuel is sustainable. But you see, there's 96 point something left that does not fly on SAF. And the supply is by no way enough to actually help us get much greener there. And still, we believe in it. So 14% of the supply we bought. And we also look in other areas. I mean, you mentioned electrification of the smaller vehicles. We're also looking at the large trucks, because obviously we need to do a lot of transport between the parcel centers picking up from customers. So we have 13 or 14 e-trucks, but what is very difficult in Germany at the moment is, and also in many other countries, you don't just buy the asset at a higher price. We also need to build our own infrastructure. So we have 450 CNG trucks. We had to build our own gas stations because the infrastructure is not good enough here. We are now buying 500 e-trucks, which are significantly more expensive, 3 or 4 times. But we also have to build our own charging stations, because unfortunately the infrastructure here is not equipped. And it's understood, and this is another fact that's very sobering, it's fully understood. And yet, the pace at which we are moving to build up this infrastructure will never be fast enough to just contain the emissions that we have, let alone actually reduce them significantly.
Nicola, one more question for you before I come back to Johan. GreenTech Festival is all about innovation and new solutions, and there are a lot of smaller companies here in the room who are looking at scaling up new technologies. So it's kind of a two-part question. For DHL, how do you foster innovation and new solutions within the context of a very large organization? And then secondly, how do you think about the opportunity to partner with smaller organizations to drive innovation?
So first of all, I really congratulate the founders and the organizers to call it a festival. Because we could just say this is a green tech conference, just like many other conferences. But it's a festival, because this is a serious topic, and it's not an easy topic. And to make a festival out of it, I think this is the right message, and this is how we should all look at this topic. Now, as I mentioned before, we have been the innovator on the e-delivery vehicles, but we also have other ideas. So for example, and this will only be published really widely tomorrow, we also partnered up with Scania because we wanted a flexible e-truck. So it helps that our group CEO is an engineer. So we worked with them, and we created something called an EREV. So that's an extended range electric vehicle. That means it drives, in our tests, which we did now for 100 days, it drives about 91% electric. But if the charging station is occupied or something happens, there is an engine, a conventional engine, that helps actually to boost it. So 91% on electric, I think this is something that could be potentially really be the innovation in the e-truck area. But we also work on smaller innovations that you don't see on the road. So for example, our pack stations. We were also the inventor of the pack stations, which the people in Germany here certainly will know. And that doesn't sound intuitively, we do this also to reduce emissions. But if you think about it, you know, more and more cities are getting green. They don't want trucks inside the city, they don't want emissions, they don't want noise. So we also created now our own white label pack station, where every competitor also can deliver to the same pack station. So if you think here in Berlin, you have a lot of new quartiere where you don't want cars, perfect. We put in a white label pack station, we deliver and competition delivers. Or we put them at highly frequented spaces where you don't need to drive there with the car, you pass anyway. And this is also an innovation that helps reduce carbon emission.
Thank you, Nicola. Johan, I want to bring you back in here. I think there's clearly a need now to focus on adaptation and resilience and to scale up investment. I mean, we're seeing, as you've talked about, devastating wildfires, storms, floods, etc. My question is, do you see that happening potentially more quickly? Is it possibly easier to mobilize funding and action on adaptation because it is more like, as you said earlier, you know, being punched in the face and it will be glaringly obvious? Or do you think it will be quite difficult? How do you think that will look?
Yeah, thanks. I'll come to you. Let me just highlight 2 points that Nicola made that I think are really decisive. Number one is, if every company in the world could do like you, move the green strategy away from being a department to becoming a core part of your business, that's success. And we're seeing that in many sectors where sustainability is centered to the management teams, it's centered to the boards. We see CEOs spending much more time with their environmental advisory boards. I think this is a trajectory, and I think we can all help each other there. And secondly, I would say that, you know, you're heroes here, and many of you are heroes here, but I think what companies need to do is also to put more pressure on policy. It shouldn't be DHL that invests in all the charging infrastructure. It shouldn't be DHL building up the infrastructure away from the infrastructure that we have taxpayers been paying for 100 years to build up a fossil fuel-based driven infrastructure, and now we're actually shifting that. And it's very messy because we don't have the governance that really puts in the big investments as a collective. And I think it's a public sector responsibility first and foremost, not a private company responsibility. I mean, you should go on doing what
Yes,
you're doing,
we will.
but I just think it's unfair in a way, and it's unfair competition as well. But to your question, Albert, so adaptation is a really tricky domain because on the one hand, you're absolutely right. When it hits you in the face with lives lost, disease, and heat waves, and fires, and storms, this, of course, is a factor that helps us rise to the challenge. On the other hand, we also know that we need to prioritize mitigation first and foremost for the simple reason that, for example, we've agreed now on the big agenda on loss and damage, which is a compensation scheme for those who are hit by human-caused climate change. Well, but if we put all the billions there, and all the debates end up there as a kind of an equity dimension, which there's really good arguments for that, but if that means that we simply just do never bend the curve on fossil fuel emissions, then of course we're in a lose-lose route. So I'm of the view today that we should focus on resilience building, and how do we define resilience then in this conundrum? Well, I define it as zero carbon adaptive capacity, meaning that we have to merge these two concepts together. That yes, we need adaptation, but the adaptation has to be green in itself. We have to have sustainable adaptation options which are zero carbon, circular, and kind of aligned with working with nature. And again, we know that is definitely something we have solutions for, but I think it's wrong to separate these two agendas into isolated areas, and they get stuck politically, as you know, in the whole climate negotiations. We tend to debate the global north and global south inequities on adaptation, and particularly on loss and damage, and then we, in the last 24 hours, try to get statements on phasing out fossil fuels, and we disagree. And this is not very constructive. It has to be turned around.
So on that, and I think we only have time for one last question, but I'd like to get both of your reflections on where we are in the world today, because climate isn't the only thing that's going on in the world. We have a US administration that's trying to slow down the energy transition and introducing trade barriers. And here in Europe, we have an increased focus on security as well. So maybe for each of you to reflect on different parts of that. Johan, you're very involved in international climate negotiations. I'd love to get your take on what you think the current kind of geopolitical landscape means for the outlook on international climate policy. And Nicola, maybe just a comment on what do you think all of that means for the transition, and how do we make sure that we stay on track? Maybe Johan, you could go first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be very honest with you, and it will come as no surprise. I'm sure we share this, all of us. I mean, there's reason to be really concerned right now. We're now in 2025. We're in the midst of this decade when science has shown clear that we have to cut global emissions by half, and we're still just increasing emissions. And at that moment, we get a US administration that is backing down, and given the geopolitics in the world, we're very unlikely to make progress, which of course is a deep, deep concern. And we have all the assaults on science, and we have a revival of denialism, and we have difficulties even in the climate leadership in the world, which is represented by the European Union, and Germany is a very central leader here. We have also tendencies of seeing signs of challenges. I had a discussion with Wopke Hoekstra just a few days back, the European Commissioner on Climate, who's struggling to get the ETS2 really secured, which is to put a price on carbon on the transport sector, agriculture, outside of industry. So yes, there's reason for concern. But on the other hand, there's also reason for reassurance. We have the recent opinion polls showing that despite all the shaking up in the world, still 60-70% of citizens across the world are concerned about climate change, they trust science, and they want action on climate change. I feel very reassured that the Brazilian presidency for COP30 in Belém, Andrea Correa do Lago and Ana Toni, they are very committed to make the COP30 a game-changing COP meeting. They want this to be the planet COP, getting nature and climate integrated, but also seriously taking a stab on mitigation. And I think they're really working in that direction. So I think my signal also to this fantastic festival is for the world to just stay on track. and not get too bogged down by the media and social media and all the noise out there that is giving this impression that we're suddenly turning off everything that has to do with sustainability. We're not. We're standing on a very solid foundation. We have a very solid basis upon which we're moving. DHL is not going to deviate from your strategy. And so I think, and neither is science. So I mean, and neither is civil society. So I think we are, in a way, just holding our track at this point. But there's definitely concern because there's no signs that we can cut emissions by half as we need over the next few years. So, you know, it's a mixed picture, but it tells me we need to stand stronger than ever.
And Nicola, does the current geopolitical outlook change anything for you in terms of the focus on energy security, or how do we stay on track?
I think it's very clear that political sentiment does not alter the physics of the atmosphere. And neither does it alter the need for diversity, nor for female support. So for us, it doesn't matter what other countries, even though they are large, now start discussing. It's a fact. It's a fact, and this sentiment will not change this fact. So we're staying on track, and you mentioned also defense and security. Yes, that's also a big topic, or these are big topics, but it's not a neither nor, or an either-or question. In Germany, we have 100 billion now set aside for climate, and I really hope that it will not be a prescriptive, this is where we are going. But we have to be more open. We need to have the goal in our sight, but how we get there, please leave it up to the companies or to people who really know a lot about it, and let us go the way and put the infrastructure in place so that we can actually work on this sustainability agenda. I think this is really the most important. Support the train company here in Germany that we get a proper infrastructure. We have 6% of our parcel on the train. But we need better infrastructure, otherwise this does not work. We need charging stations. This is what we need, really, and I think the new government, I have hope, because if we don't have hope, we don't need to continue on. I have hope that they have heard the scientists, but they have also heard the companies, what we need, less bureaucracy, more infrastructure, and I still believe we are on the way to actually achieve our goals, and I'm very happy that it's many, many people who have the same thoughts and many people who work on that.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to end this discussion on a note of hope. That is a great place to end, and it's been a pleasure kicking off the day with the both of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.